From the edge of the Great Red Divide right to your house, your car, or wherever you may be, this is the Heartland Mamas podcast with your host, Heidi Henry. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another discussion on rural health from the edge of the Great Red Divide, of which I reside. Here in the Great Red Divide, we are on the edge of the blue edges of the United States. So I have a toe grip, if you will, on the blue parts of Illinois, which have wonderful hospitals, healthcare systems, an abundance of doctors. You can find a CVS or a Walgreens on almost every corner next to your Starbucks. There is no issues in urban areas or suburban areas on getting healthcare. But out here in the Great Red Divide, look out because we are losing every single minute of every day. There is another advanced directive trying to drive our rural doctors and hospitals and clinics right out of the area. Since 2017, my area has lost 4 rural healthcare full service hospitals. 4. It started with St. Mary's and Streeter, and there was nothing. I could not get my congressman at that time even remotely interested in looking into why we were losing St. Mary's when people would have to give birth driving 45 minutes to an hour away to Pontiac or Ottawa or LaSalle, Peru to have a baby. And God forbid if you have an appendicitis or an accident. But they're like, no, no, no. We're just going to let them become an emergency room, an ascending center. We're not going to have inpatient services anymore, and we are certainly not going to be a full service hospital any longer. All right, that's one down. Not too long, well, right around the same time, Northwestern, that used to be based in Evanston, took over Sandwich Hospital, which does have some inpatient services, but no OB anymore, no serious surgery. You basically come, I went there when I broke my knee. You sit in their waiting room. I was there for 4 hours with in a lot of pain in a very uncomfortable chair. I just wanted to go home. And I'm not, anybody who knows me well knows that I am an impatient patient. I just, I'm not a Karen, but I mean, if you can't see me right now, let me go home and just kind of, hang out where I'm comfortable and let me know when you have time. And even for me to go to the doctor is a big deal because I'm not a good patient. My doctors can tell you that I'm just not a good patient. And so I'm sitting there in this uncomfortable chair, but Sandwich Hospital, by and large, has to send, like they had to send my radiology out to a doctor that was not on site. It was in DeKalb to take a look at my imaging and then get back to them in triage to let them know if I should stay or go, should I see a doctor, whatever. It's just an emergency room. Okay, so 2 years ago, my special women's health doctor, because when you get to be a woman of a certain age, you need to see a doctor that can deal with um, pre-baby making gynecology or post-baby making gynecology. It's a whole specialty. And so going to see my special lady doctor, 2 years ago, she told me, hey, she was at St. Margaret's, which is in Spring Valley, which is quite a drive from me. I mean, I bypassed a couple of hospitals to go see her. Um, she told me, we're going to combine with IVCH, which was Illinois Valley Community Hospital in the LaSalle, Peru area, and she said, so I'll be moving. Okay. Here's the problem with that. IVCH has never had a good reputation for managed fiscal management. And I'm thinking, well, maybe if they're going to combine with St. Margaret's in Spring Valley, maybe St. Margaret's will be able to, with all their big Catholic charities oversight, can help turn them around. I mean, OSF, which is St. Elizabeth's in Ottawa, which used to be the Community Hospital of Ottawa, taken over by that giant healthcare system, seems to be doing okay. I mean, lost a lot of doctors when that happened, but seems to be rolling along. I always tell people if I get hit by a car in front of there, please take me to the vet next door. Because I've known him since he was born, and he's a really good doctor. I'm not too crazy about the hospital in Ottawa. I don't go there. I don't use their services. So, and that's a personal choice from a personal matter, um, which I'm not going to discuss. But trust me on this. This decision serves me very well. Anyway, So she tells me she's going to IVCH, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen to St. Margaret's? And she goes, well, we're not going to deliver babies here anymore. We're not going to do any OB, only a few selective surgeries, not very much. We're really going to move everything over there. Well, it was only about 14 miles away, so it wasn't real far. So I thought, well, that'll be okay. It's not too bad of a drive. And I went ahead and went and saw her there. She didn't say anything. And then lo and behold, about IVCH closing, I mean, it was kind of a surprise. It came out of the blue about 5, 6, 7 days ago. Just, we're closing. We can't afford to stay here any longer. We're closing. Now, I have to tell you that of those 4 hospitals that close, they are largely Medicare and Medicaid hospitals. They don't have a lot of people with private insurance. These are usually an older group or a group of people that through the ACA took Medicaid expansion, are on Medicaid, which is what I pay my taxes for. So people who need it can have health care. Seriously, I would much rather give my taxes over to help people stay well and healthy or get care when they need it than anything else I can think of. So and there's very little notification to the public. They couldn't get to a contract agreement with their emergency room doctors, so they quit delivering babies right away, and no more even emergency department. Just like that, just snap, it's over. Now here's me thinking, well, they combined with this big oversight of St. Margaret's, who's oversighted by another big Catholic charities entity. What the heck is the problem? So there's multiple problems here involved. It's not just the administration at IVCH, which has been pretty sketchy for a long time. I mean, just talking to people who use their services, I've never been in that hospital myself. You just what you read in the paper and what people say. But they don't have this stellar reputation for management, upper level management. I'm not talking about the doctors and nurses. People seem to be really in love with their doctors and nurses that are there, with the whole staff that are there. But you have to understand that these hospitals and all hospitals are part of a giant tax exempt network, and they can be either community affiliated, which means they're supported by community, or they are religiously affiliated. Now, the problems with the religious affiliation is that they can refuse services for something that's not within their religious beliefs, but they are still tax exempt. So they can discriminate, yet keep their tax exempt status because that is allowed. Now, I think if you're tax exempt, you have to follow the laws of the land that say everybody is equal under the law, and you have to take care of them. Even if they're a transgendered pregnant person, you still got to take care of them. You don't have to agree with their decision, but you have to treat them equally under the law. That is the law. You don't get to pick and choose. But they're religiously affiliated, so they go, you know what, we really don't want to do that, and we are not going to do that. So they're going to have to find somebody else. I'm sorry, if you do that, you lose your tax exempt status. At least you should, under the law, right? I mean, why should they discriminate about that? What's next? They don't like people with graying brown hair, huh? Am I going to be the next person discriminated against? I don't know. I mean, that's pretty abstract. That's their choice. Do you get to be a choice if we're kind of paying your bills? Right? So, and in the oversight of these hospitals, you have administrators in 6 and 7 figure salaries. Now, these are not medical staff. These are administrators. And they are paid almost a bounty. Well, they are paid a bounty on the profit margins of these hospitals. Now, you can thank Richard Nixon for bringing us the for-profit healthcare system that we have now. You can thank Nixon because it was his decision to change that. Nixon. That Nixon. Yeah, the impeached Nixon. It was his decision that these hospitals could be for profit. That didn't serve anybody but him and people who were wealthy like him. It certainly does not serve the public or the greater good. So when you have administrators that are not providing medical care, but are the boss, if you will, and they are um, making $1 million a year, $900,000 a year, 600,000. They're making over $150,000 a year. They're probably making more than a lot of the staff there at the hospitals. They're making $100,000 a year. They're making more than most of the nurses, certainly. That's not right. That they're making that much money, and those that are slaving away in the cafeteria are making the state minimum wage of $12 an hour. That's terrible. That's not a good use of your financial resources. Now, on top of that, everything they have, their footprint in the community, which is important. They don't pay real estate taxes. They can declare eminent domain if they need to expand. They don't pay for anything, no taxes on anything, from anything that comes into the hospital to be served in the cafeteria to anything that is used in the emergency room or in the surgical suites or in the rooms. They don't pay sales tax on anything. They don't pay real estate taxes. They don't pay income taxes, nothing. But you know what they do have? Shareholders. So that means they are producing profit. They are producing profit that they're paying back to the shareholders whilst at the same time closing rural hospital systems because they're going broke. Well, maybe if you brought your payroll in line with reality, and I'm talking about administrative payroll, and maybe if you didn't have shareholders like a for-profit company, maybe you'd have enough money to run the damn hospital. Now, on top of that, we have an issue with CMS, which is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Systems. This is a .gov. This is a governmental oversight. This is a governmental entity. And they would like all the rural hospitals and healthcare systems to close and just go to emergency and sending only because it saves money, because people should go elsewhere to deliver babies. They should go elsewhere to have heart attacks and strokes. They should go elsewhere to have car accidents. So if you go to the emergency room and you've had a terrible car accident, and it's something they can't treat in the emergency room, you know what they do? They stick you on a long ambulance ride, providing there is an ambulance available, or they put you, worse yet, in a helicopter and fly you to a trauma center. I know somebody right now that's in bankruptcy because of her helicopter rides that she didn't sign up for when she got sick. She had an appendicitis, but they couldn't treat it at St. Mary's and Streeter, so they flew her to Peoria. And then she had to figure out how to get home. Okay, so they flew her to Peoria for this surgery. And then she's there and she's got no way to get home. So she had to find somebody to give her a ride home. And I mean, can you imagine feeling that bad that you have to go to the emergency room and then having to take a helicopter ride that's not covered by your insurance at all because you have really crappy insurance? And then you're down there and you're a single person with no family close by. And somehow you got to get home from Peoria back to Streeter. That's a long drive. And asking somebody to come pick you up in Peoria is a big deal. If somebody calls me up and says, "Can you come pick me up in Peoria?" I'd probably go, "Who is this again?" No, I'd probably go and get them. She didn't ask me. But I'm just thinking, talk about adding insult to injury. So I'm telling you, CMS, if you're going to make rural people, and over 20% of us citizens of the United States and non-citizens of the United States, over 20% of us live rural. And most of us have very damn dangerous jobs. I know I do. I get hurt. I'm more likely to end up in the emergency room than I am likely to end up in my doctor's office. My doctors can tell you that. It's because of the nature of my job and what I do for a living and what a lot of people do for a living out here. We work on heavy machinery. We live in areas where they don't salt the roads. We live in areas where we handle huge animals. that don't always want to do what we want them to do. When I broke my knee, I was just walking on a broken sidewalk and not looking where I was going. That was my bad because I was in suburbia and I should have been looking where I was going, and it's okay. I'm going to be just fine. But if that had happened out where I live, or say if it happened to me in Spring Valley, honest to God, I'd have to go to Princeton somehow. And then I have to have somebody come and get me in Princeton, which is over an hour from my house. But that's what happens. That's what happens, CMS. You have to think about the logistics of what you're asking people to do. Now, when I reached out to my state senator, state representative, my congresswoman, CMS never got brought up. I discovered that one on my own. I knew about the shareholders. I knew about the salaries. I knew about all of that. But I didn't know, how did I miss the fact that this is kind of a encouraged, grant-driven, monetized relationship our government has with rural healthcare systems. Close down. We'll give you grants because you close down. Because you're just going to see people, will do some telemedicine, and if anything's so bad that you can't handle it, we'll just fly them somewhere. If you're going to do that, make sure you're covering the cost of that life flight. My insurance is good. It will cover it. But I have, really good insurance left over from my husband's great IBEW job. I'm an anomaly out here. And when my husband and I had huge amounts of financial distress when our son was sick, I mean, huge amounts of financial distress, the people standing with us shoulder to shoulder in the courtrooms as they were getting judgments and liens put on them for not being able to afford their medical bills was shoulder to shoulder. It was standing room only. And that was almost 20 years ago when that was going on. It took me until about 7 years ago to pay it all off, maybe 8 years ago now to pay it all off. All 240,000 of it I paid off. Didn't do a bankruptcy. But I want you to know that we have a serious issue, rural people. And you know what? They're counting on you to continue voting the same way you usually do, rural, that allows entities like CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid, to tell our rural hospital systems that these people are not interested in Medicare for all or Medicaid for all or universal health care. They're going to fight their upper and lower houses. We see this in Kansas all the time. Kansas, when I took the tour of rural healthcare systems in the Great Red Divide in Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas, my indoor riding arena is larger than most of the hospitals that were 2 hours apart in Kansas, and more are closing every day because they can count, their Democratic governor can count on their red upper and lower houses to never get a bill across to sign to take the expansion of Medicaid through ACA. So CMS sees this as a constant, hey, they don't care about healthcare. They certainly don't vote in their own interest. What are they going to care when we close another hospital? And until people care, until people make enough of a stink and they vote and vote and vote and speak out about this, this is not going to change. This is going to get worse. Now, for me, I'm on the edge of the Great Red Divide. I don't live in it. I'm on the edge of it. I mean, where I live technically is in the Red Divide, but if I just go 40 minutes east of me, I'm in blue zone, with great hospitals. So, but for those of you that are living in the middle of nowhere, you're in trouble. When I was in Kansas, I interviewed a lot of people that use the rural healthcare system out there. You know what they do? All of the women that are going to have babies go and get induced, because they can't count on when they're going to go into labor how far they are from the hospital. They either get a little place to stay, like an Airbnb close to the hospital, so they can go into labor naturally, if you will, on their own time. My mother was an OB/GYN nurse, and she would tell you every baby's got its own birth date, and that's when they're born, they're born. So, but I want you to understand that when you live super rural, you have to pick when you're going to have your baby. May 1st, I'll be induced. Your baby may not be completely ready, but that's when you're going to have it because that's the time slot you can get in the hospital to have the baby. That's the reality of life in the country. So I want you to know this is not going to change. I did not realize that there was a federal directive to change and close our rural health systems, our rural hospitals, to incentivize that with grants, to close these hospitals and then bus us, ambulance ride us, have us drive ourselves, or fly us someplace else. And they're not going to cover the cost, nor are they going to make sure we get home again. And believe me, when you live rural, you got to know who's going to pick you up at the other end. This can't be left to happenstance, you know. So I'm going to ask you, if you're within earshot today, to call your member of Congress. I'm going to ask you to call your state senator. I'm going to ask you to call your state and local representation and ask them about CMS and the directive to close rural hospitals and just send us someplace else. Because that's how this happens. That's how this happens. So I just want you to start thinking about that right now. I have a cat that's on my desk. Sorry. I don't get cats down here in my studio very often, but I thought I saw a mouse earlier today. So I brought the cats in, and they are everywhere but mousing because, you know, house cats. Anyway, this is Heidi Henry from the edge of the Great Divide, Great Red Divide, right to your ears. This is Heidi Henry from the Heartland Mamas podcast. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.